Morning, everybody. Decided I'm going to hold off starting the operating session until next weekend. Just got back from Chillicothe last night, and I sort of took a tour of the areas that I modeled, took some pictures, what they look like now. I decided I would go ahead and do a video about that. I've also got a couple trains in here too that I caught while I was there. But I'll sort of show you how I modeled the buildings, what they look like now. Also want to have one disclaimer, I guess. When you're in N scale, probably all scales, you know, T-Sheet Train Group does a really good job of making windows and doors and stuff. But unless they're the exact size you want, your building is not going to look exactly right. So I always say I'm trying to capture the flavor of the building. Like one thing you'll notice in the building when I show you the Arbins building, the white stripe on the building, for example, it goes between the windows. And so that's why I modeled it on mine. But mine is a lot wider because my windows aren't exactly the same. I couldn't get the same dimensions. Plus, I don't know the dimensions of the windows either. I'm just guessing. Trying to do the best I can to capture the flavor of the buildings. Hopefully you'll agree that I did a pretty good job on most of them. Be a little bit longer video. There will be a couple of Norfolk Southern trains in it. A very brief clip of the Chessie local returning back to the yard office. Besides that, it's just going to be me talking and showing pictures. I hope you enjoy it. In Chillicothe, day after Thanksgiving, 2024, corner of Red Street and 7th Street. It's the neighborhood I grew up in. Got a southbound Norfolk Southern train. Right across the 7th Street underpass. Probably see an increase in traffic on this street. People don't want to wait for the train on Eastern Avenue, so they come down here to 7th. That is the Main Street overpass where the depot was up there. See the steam from the paper mill. It's a cold morning. There's that Pier 6 commemorative car Norfolk Southern did. Never seen that. Pretty cool. Glad I kept filming. So the White House right there, I grew up in the house right beside it. Look through the trees, you can see the 2nd story bedroom window. That's where I lived from basically 64 to 75. So pretty good view of the N&W trains. Alright, let's go look at some of the stuff I modeled. So I'm underneath the Main Street overpass now. That is the main line of the B&O going that way. Looking back, going west. And the Norfolk Southern line is right there. That's where the diamond was, right there. So you see what I'm talking about. When they built the overpass, basically it turned these houses into not very desirable places to live. And the businesses along with it went downhill. It was about 1960, so this area sort of became pretty run down. Now this bar has been there forever. They used to call it Taylor's Stag Bar. It's sort of a popular place now, but it has survived. You can see the upper floor is boarded up. There used to be some buildings here, and they burnt and they tore them down, and so it's been sort of a depressing area now. I believe that building there used to be actually an ice house, if I remember correctly, a long time ago. But this area, Chillicothe, the east end, right around the railroad tracks, is hit pretty hard. So they've cleaned all this up, a lot of it. There were homeless camps down here. I heard there were drug dealers, meth labs, all kinds of stuff. So they came in and cleaned it up earlier this year. So here's my shop buildings that I've modeled. And this loading dock over here. I'll show you a picture that I took when they were going to abandon all this. And there's actually a boxcar there with, looked like probably going to be loaded with company stores. There's a brick building at the end of this thing. Of course, all this was torn down in the 90s. And there are businesses in those buildings, like a trucking company and a steel fabrication company of some type. But they cleaned all this up. So where I'm standing, not at the moment, this was like one of the buildings that, on a machine shop or something, that I'm in now. But where these rails are, that was the roundhouse. And you'll be able to see the rails in the ground here pretty soon. CSX still uses this. That blue building through the trees is CSX track crew. That's where they keep materials and stuff, park their trucks. Again, this is Thanksgiving morning, so not anticipating seeing anybody working. Now we're into the roundhouse. So these stalls were the last ones that were there that actually modeled. You can see the rails in the ground. And the main reason I came down here, turntable pit. This was so overgrown before, couldn't see it. Now they have cleaned it all out, and you can actually see the turntable pit, at least what's not filled in. I'm standing in part of the pit right now. It's been filled in. But this was the pit for the turntable, and the depot was over that way. And I'm going to go over there and stand where I stood 38 years ago here in a minute. So 38 years ago, day after Thanksgiving, I stood here on this platform, the depot, with the depot behind me, and was hoping to see a DT&I run-through train because they were still running through on the B&O on the chassis at that time. Saw a couple other rail fans. They said they hadn't seen one in a few days. Of course, I was only in town for a few days, but so yeah, like I said, I'll intersperse this with some other pictures. But if you look behind me, that's where the line went west, and I'll go and swivel around. And that's east, looking toward the area that I model. And this is where the yard was. That green area, that's where the yard was. I'll have to see if some of my pictures, if that line of poles is in the pictures. But not a very big area for the yard. And again, I'll walk up this way a little bit. And that blue building, modern blue building, is where CSX, the track crew, works out of that building. And in some of the pictures, you'll see a big, huge silver tank, which was diesel fuel, and it was over there about where all those trucks are parked. The last time I was here, you couldn't see these buildings because it was all so overgrown. So like I said, there's a lot of criminal activity happening here. There's a bunch of people squatting in tents back here. They had electricity run from a power pole, and it was in the winter time too. You see the smokestack above the building there. I sort of modeled that from a different angle anyhow. Alright, so let's go see what else we can see. So this is the connection track now. This is the old main line, but now all it does is curve around to, actually it's not the old main line, it was tied into the main line. My car is parked on the main line. This connects to the Norfolk Southern, so they have access to that huge grain elevator. CSX still ships by far the majority of the grain out of that elevator, but I have seen Norfolk Southern serve it before. So in the 90s, after they abandoned all this, this was, originally part of the boneyard. These actually would have been some of the tracks that, like, I've got my abandoned car sitting on. They built a transload here, and it's for chemicals and stuff. And I've got a few pictures that someone gave me of them switching this out, like covered hoppers. They've cleaned it up, and they've actually started getting pulpwood in here. For the paper plant. So there's like maybe three pulpwood cars sitting there that they offloaded there. And at one time they could get pulpwood directly to the paper plant. When Glatfelder took it over, I think it was the third owner after Meade, they actually got pulpwood by rail. But I guess they don't have that ability anymore to do that. All the pulpwood comes in by truck, so they ship it in here and they transload it to trucks and truck it over the 1 mile to the paper plant. I guess that's a way of making money anyhow. But it's pretty cool that they're using these tracks again anyhow. It'd be a very simple industry to model too. You see the shop buildings here. This was the boneyard, what they called it. The reason why is partially because of the cemetery behind it. That's where all the bad older cars were parked, and where I played as a kid, and old cabooses and stuff. So here are the buildings I modeled on the curve. Big buildings, the Arbenz building. Now I did a mirror image of them. So in my layout, the little building is on the right. Here it's on the left. And you can see the low buildings down there. lot of times this yard is filled up with grain hoppers, so I couldn't get this picture before. But I'll show you a picture of my model now. This is where General Chemical was. Not a lot to show you here. The building was over here. You can sort of see how the fence was painted green. It had some camouflage on it so you couldn't see real well. So that sort of duplicated that. On my layout, tried to, but it's all gone now. Alright, so this is Miller Distribution, and the spur actually came down here. This had like a hole in the wall cut. The spur was down in there, and that's where they unloaded the beer. I originally had the loading dock on this left-hand wall, but I built the dock on the other side to get it off of the ITT Grinnell spur. But this is the wall where it would have been in the prototype picture behind the Southern boxcar. ITT Grinnell. Now that ramp was not there. That's the loading dock where my cars go in now. You see how there's 3 different styles of siding. I tried to model that. There were tracks in the ground right there where they built that ramp a couple years ago. I didn't model the brick office thing, but I sort of tried to do the dome over that. So I think it did a fairly good representation of where the cars are loaded and unloaded anyhow. And here comes the Chillicothe local back in. Pretty short train today. The caboose has been here forever. Like 30-some years. That's the yard office that I modeled. So I'll show you my model of that. Pretty cool. I think the guy's got the remote control. He's actually operating the locomotive from the caboose. Didn't expect to see that today. So I'm at Barber Spring, which is used to be Union Spring now. You can see the type of rods that they get you used to get them in gondolas. Now my understanding is they get them in bulkhead flat cars. So we'll go up around here, pull around the loading dock, but I'm not going to get out of the car. You can also see like the yellow panels on the building. Sort of tried to duplicate that on the side that faces the tracks. Here's sort of the little loading dock area that I modeled. And they've closed that in now. The track no longer goes into it. This is just a Rick's kit. I just painted it to sort of look like the Wherever office building. I thought it was close enough to represent it. And I can't get a good picture of the railroad side or wherever. This is the office building. It's been closed, gosh, 30 years now or so. They use part of the plant for warehousing and stuff, but it's actually a super fun site. There's the water tower that I try to kit bash, a 3D printed thing I got off Shapeways, and put the light on top of it. The light's still flashing up there. I don't know if you can see it here. And some of the stuff that they did here, it's pretty depressing. My dad, worked here for over 30 years, so he'd hate to see it like this. But that's about all I can show you of Wherever. All right. I got northbound loaded coal train. Good to see coal moving on the N&W. Drop here. Yep, there it went. Conrail cars. N&W trains were never really a problem for the city, tying up the streets. They don't cross as many as the B&O, which went diagonally, tied up the entire town. And plus the B&O did the crew changes, and N&W didn't have that problem, so it's really not much of an inconvenience now. Hope you enjoyed it. Everybody stay safe.